Okay, I'm sorted. I've got most of my pages piled and queued here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the largest piece, which is going to go on the base. So this is actually the pocket page that I'm touching right now. Everything else is attached to it. So I'm going to open that up, and I've got my tape down. I'm going to get it off and get some glue laid down, and then we're going to lay down this this first piece, and it is one large piece, so it goes rather quickly. Okay, we'll need a little bit of glue. Art glitter glue. Be sure to stop by our shop, www.scrapandcreate.com. And you will definitely find some art glitter glue, and I think I let it glue closed. I push that through. You can also buy the tips from our shop, which I love this tip. I do a lot of scrapping, and I think I mentioned it before. It is not a lifetime tip, but it will last quite a long time. If you're a hobbyist and you know, you maybe do 3 or 4 albums a year, no problem, it's gonna last. But I do 1 or 2 albums a month, so there is a valve in there, and at some point it does wear down. Not a valve, but a ball joint. It's also important to take it apart and clean it, and that will extend the life of it as well. But I really like it. It works a lot like some of the other fine tips, but what I love about it is this: I don't lose my pen. The other ones I was constantly losing my straight pen. So I just got tired of spending too much time searching for it. So I'm just turning it so that I can see the edges that I'm trying to square off of a little bit better. So I've turned it sideways. This is directional, so I'm double checking. This is the top, this is the bottom, and this is my crowns. And I want to make sure they're right side up. Looks like I got a little piece of tape sticking out, so there we go. And there's just going to be a nice little margin here between that decorative strip next to the gusset. And I'm leaning over because the page isn't grabbing. There we go. Okay, lovely. That is, hopefully that's glue and not tape. I think I've got so much glue on my hands, I'm transferring it. Maybe I should take a break and wash my hands. So that is the inside of page 2. So you won't see any of it when it's completely closed, but it's a nice, big, lovely place for a mat. So now I'm getting together the pieces that are, so this is the large flap inside, and that's what I'm referring to, this flap as a large flap, because there's flaps out here too, but this is really the large left-hand flap. And one of the things I was curious about, and I'm probably going to put a poll out on, is the cut list. How much you guys rely on the cut list, or if you're just taking what I'm saying and putting in the video. So this is what this is going to look like when I'm done. Because why am I asking you that? I'm just kind of curious. It takes a little bit of effort to put it into the video if you guys aren't using it. I don't really want to do it, and I know that Christine also puts a lot of effort into putting her cut list together, and she does everything out of the goodness of her heart, and I really don't want to take advantage of her. If you guys aren't using it, if you're just listening to what we're saying, or if you're looking at the banners, and that's enough, let us know. And I'll probably put a poll out, and you guys can either respond to that or leave a comment in the video below. Okay, I'm going to get some tape on this and then get this down. I personally have, it's been a while, but I've followed cut lists before, but I find it very confusing, frankly. My preference is to see, is to either hear when you're doing the process what the size of the paper is, or to see a banner during the process. But that's just me personally. So I'm curious if people actually pull that print list up and or cut list up and print it in advance, or if they use it all, at all. Okay. The other reason I don't like to use cut lists is I just don't trust them. So I'd rather do it right at the time I'm ready to construct it, because I can check and check and check. And pre-cutting stuff is just, I don't know, asking for trouble in my mind. Because what if you, okay, I was just doing a quick dry fit to visually get an idea of where my margins are going to land. If you pre-cut, you can't uncut. So again, I prefer to do my cutting right as I'm building the page and not in advance. Or the other thing is you can pre-cut an 1/8 or a 1/16 of an inch larger, and then you can always trim it down that last little bit. But anxious to hear what you guys have to say. I'm going to get a contrast piece of paper put under here. There we go. Looks good. So, and the one thing I don't do, and this is just because it's so complicated, is I do not give you a cut list for the designer paper. And that's for two reasons. One, if you make a mistake and somebody pre-cuts their paper, they could waste something, and I just am so afraid of that I hate to put it in writing. So the cut list that I normally give you is for the black pieces only. So if you lose a piece of black cardstock, it's one thing, but to lose a designer sheet, that's traumatic. So, and then the other reason I don't do it is because when I do piecing like this, it's really hard for me to even get my pre-measurements. I wind up roughing it in and then just trimming, teeny tiny pieces off until it fits just the way I want to see it. And it can vary just by having your page slightly larger or smaller than the page I'm working with. So it scares me. So I'm going to get the top and the bottom in, and then I'm going to center the centerpiece. Center that strip. So let me get some tape on here real quick and lay that. Is that what I was doing? I tried to... trying to remember if I had this pattern or this pattern, and I like both. Ooh, that's a tough one. What do y'all think? That is really tough. I really like this pattern, but I think in terms of placing a picture, this might be the better side up. I've been known to do that. I get it all planned out, then lay it out, and then go, oh, I think I like the other side better. Another reason not to pre-cut. Pardon me. Sorry about that, guys. No getting around it. Okay, well, this shouldn't take too long. It's only 3 pieces, and then we've got the inside of that flap done. And then we'll move along to the outside of the large flap. And there's a couple more things going on there. Let me burnish real quick. So I burnish for 2 reasons. One, I want the tape, when I go to peel it up, I want it to stick to the designer paper and not to the backing of the tape itself, so that when this pops up, it's not lifting the tape with it. Okay, so this is not a directional pattern, so that keeps it nice and simple. I'm going to go ahead and move this strip, and I am going to turn my book over so I can see these three sides. Get my contrast paper behind it, and then get this laid down. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it right side up again. And then going to add my last strip. Okay, and now all I have to do is center it between these two. It's so small, I'm going to skip the tape and just do glue. One of the other reasons I like to use tape, just FYI, is if you use tape on the very, very edge of the page and then glue on the middle, when you press down and burnish, the glue will not go past the tape. So you never have to worry about cleaning up your glue line. That's one of the reasons I like to do it. Because it's a pain to clean up a glue line. Even though art glitter glue dries clear, it still changes the texture of the paper slightly. So if you have too much flowing out, you can see it. There we go. It's a little bit, that's so frustrating. It's a little bit shorter than I'd like it, but it's pretty good. You can see right here, because I don't have tape, there's a little bit of glue. So I'm gonna run my thumbnail there and clean it up. Okay, great. That looks pretty darn good. So the two inside pieces are done for page 2. Okay. Now we're on to, these are all inside pieces. Where is my beautiful girl? Here she is. So I try to keep, the reason I like to label things is what I found, if I try to label it as a bundle, I forget sometimes which side I had originally planned. So if I put a little sticky on it, then I know this is the side that's supposed to be up. So I'm double checking to make sure my flaps are closed the way I want them to. And why does that matter? Because I want this on top. So I don't want to accidentally lay it down on this one. So again, we want to close away from the spine, which is what I did. This is where this is going to go. I'm going to get some tape on it. We'll get it down. I'm working in my office, which has pretty good daylight. A lot of my planning actually happens in my dining room. I'm sure most of you are like me. If I didn't do my crafting in my dining room, I'd never see my husband. So he's a TV watcher. I'm not really, but it doesn't bother me. So I sit with him in the evenings. So a lot of my effort gets done sitting with him and in front of the TV, and then it gets constructed here in my office. So I have to take a lot of notes. If I was doing everything at the same time, designing and constructing, I probably wouldn't have to write myself quite as many notes, but everything kind of goes from the dining room to the craft room a couple of times before it actually gets built. And I've been frustrated by not remembering, well, which side was the up side again? And so now I've learned my lesson, and I make use of those sticky notes. And if it's on whatever side the sticky note's on, that's the up side. So if you're like me and you craft in your dining room and then actually do some of your build process in your office and you're moving things back and forth, it's not a bad technique. Okay, I'm going to get some glue down. I'm going to use my contrast. I am losing some of my light in here, so the contrast becomes more and more important for me. Someday I hope to have an actual studio set up where I've got some decent lighting and something holding up my camera, because I'd like it actually, I think, although I haven't tried it. I think I'd like to have my camera slightly more elevated, although you might get to see more of the top of my head, just so I can get more of the book in the screen at once. This is directional, so I'm going to try to shut up for a minute and make sure I lay it down the right direction. So this is the top, bottom, top, bottom. So naturally, all that stuff is on my Christmas list this year for my husband. I have this most ridiculous camera setup you've ever seen. I use my phone, which, by the way, I think is fine. I think the quality is good. You guys can let me know, but I think it's as good as any real video camera. But the setup that's so funny is it's kind of hodgepodge together with. I've used elbow joints and PVC pipe to create a tripod, because every tripod I've tried so far, the feet got in the way. So, of course, you know, the cheap ones, that is. So at some point I might invest in a real tripod. That's not PVC. The worst part about the PVC one is because PVC is soft, over time the weight of my phone it starts to sink down to my workspace. So I'm constantly trying to find something else to prop it up. Anyway, so the next piece is the pocket. There's two pieces. This is pretty straightforward, so I'm going to get this down. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll try to get down the most obvious pieces first, just to get the papers out of my way so I'm not shuffling so much. So I'll get this down and then we'll work on the inside flaps. There it is. I was going to say, of course, I lost my thing again. My handy dandy tape tearer. I like this collection. When I first saw it, of course I liked it. I always like everything that's graphic 45 immediately. But my reservation was, I don't know if there's enough color to work with here. There is. I was thinking there was not. I needed one more, color in the collection. But I overshot my tape, so I'm just going to trim it real quick. But after constructing this album, I feel pretty comfortable. There's enough colors. Some of their collections, though, you wind up with more of a contrast color. Like, say, for example, if there was a green in here, that would have been nice. But it's pretty much gold and peach pink. And it's very hard to describe. Well, here's a good example. That doesn't look very peachy. But then I look at this and I think peach, but it really isn't. But you've got this light pink and then a more, I wouldn't say fuchsia, but a little bit darker, more rosy color. But I love the gold, this color. I think this color is very rich. And I could have used more of these sheets. I noticed at the very end, in fact, when I was going back to do that pop flip just now, I wanted to use more of the gold. I didn't have it. I used quite a bit of that in the collection. Okay, get my contrast sheet. There we go. And this is actually, this corner is the edge of the sheet. This is the insert. So I'm just centering it here, looking for consistent margin, left, right. Okay. And here's one of the ways, oops, that actually went past my tape. That's pretty rare. I must have really been heavy-handed there. So one of the ways I made the gold stretch was I'm doing things like this. Otherwise, I probably could have used some more gold. Which comes from the Patterns and Solids. There are gold sheets in the collection, but they're patterned. There's no solids. Okay. So this is a flap right here, which I just lifted up. And then here is a pocket. So all I'm doing is looking at those edges to center this. Whoops, got away from me. There we go. Lovely. Okay, so that's how that's coming along. So that's my top flap, as you recall. This is a pocket down here. And then I am going to actually, this is a magnet holding the flap closed, but I'm actually going to create an insert that goes here that will hold this whole flap in place. But for now, let's go ahead and open it and get this piece in. Page 1, top flap, outside. So I think this one goes here. I'm just going to lay these down real quick to make sure I've got all the right pieces. And left flap inside, top flap inside. That goes here. And then this is going to go right here. Inside this pocket, maybe. Hopefully I've got it, yeah, I got it trimmed just right. Okay, so that is what this is going to look like when we're done. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get some tape, and I'm glad I'm looking at this right now because I've got it upside down. There is a very faint print in the background. Just furnishing everything. I probably mentioned before, but I'll mention again, I pre-inked all my edges, and I'm not heavy-handed on the ink at all. I just don't want a bare white edge because the collection papers are not core dyed, so when you trim, you get this very white edge. And if you're going to lay down on cream, no problem, but if you lay down on black, it didn't look that nice. So just another reminder, you're not watching me do it, it's all been done ahead of time. And I also decided, while we're working on this, my tip got clogged again, that if I lose light today, I'm going to go ahead and here it is, pre-tape everything else for the second half, because I think this is just too slow. I didn't realize going into it that it would be so slow, but like I said, I'm kind of out of it time-wise because I've been off the grid for about 10 days. And let me tell you, this pneumonia stuff is nothing to mess around with. I literally have been sleeping 20 hours a day. Nothing is getting done in my house. Okay, I'm just carefully slipping it into the pocket. There we go. Trying to keep it from grabbing before I'm ready. And now I'm just gonna line up the top with the score line here with a nice even, hopefully even margin. So it looks like I need to nudge it. That's too low, it needs to come up. Thank goodness for score tape, art glitter glue. There we go. In. Okay. So that is the base. Okay, and then this is the inside top. Set this aside, get some tape. Am I doing this? I think I'm doing crowns. I like that dark gold. I think it's so pretty. This is another directional piece, so I'll have to be careful when I'm laying it down because it's likely I'll turn my book upside down so I can see those three edges. The other thing I'm curious about in terms of people watching the tutorials and making their own, I'm curious how you actually use the tutorial. Do you watch the whole thing and then construct, or do you stop-start? I'm just kind of curious. I know that whenever I've tried to leverage tutorials in YouTube, I find that I stop-start. That's just, or rewind. Stop, rewind, start. So I'm kind of curious about that. If you'll watch a whole procedure and then go make it, or watch the procedure, go back, and then make it. That's more my motive. And when I'm talking about that, that was, early on when I first started crafting and making mini albums, particularly in the building of the base book, since I didn't know how to do it, and I was trying a couple of different methods for hinges and stuff like that. I know it was a lot of stop, start, rewind, stop, rewind, start. But now that I have what I would consider 90% of the process basics down, I don't do that anymore. I can look at something from start to finish and go, okay, I can do that now, just because I'm not trying to learn the technique at the same time as designing. So I'm kind of curious what you guys do and how you use the videos. Again, and all of these questions are to hopefully provide better content for you guys. And make it easy for you to use the content that we do provide. Okay, that's in. Why can't they all go down like that? That was super easy. I was going to say, well, watch, it's upside down. No, it's not. Okay, so that's in. This is in. We're making great progress on page 2. That is what it's going to look like finished. That will be up here so you won't see it. I'm going to open the left and right flaps and put this piece down now. So now I have a decision to make. This is what I planned up. And because I like the way that all goes together. But let's look at the flip side. What do we like better? I think I like the stripe better just because there's too much conflict here. So I was right. I put the sticky on the right side. Although this is really hard to cover up. Without a doubt, my favorite print in the whole package. The princess pages are pretty, but I'm big on floral. I also think that it's really, you have to be very careful about placement of patterns that have people in them, because then they wind up competing with the people in your picture, and I don't want that. So I try to, when there's people in the picture, I try to use it as more of a cover art, not as a mat. Just something else to think about when you're designing, particularly with graphic, because they always have people in their collections. In fact, let me think about that. Flutter and Floral Collection are the two that come to mind that don't have people in them at all. And I think that's pretty rare for Graphic 45. So what else is going on? Well, Christmas is right around the corner. And here we are getting to the middle of December. I haven't put up a Christmas tree. Like I said, I've been in bed for the last 10 days. So I got to as soon as I get this done, I'm going to get my house decorated. Get ready for the holidays. And my goal is to get one more video out before Christmas. And I'm actually planning on it being a Stamperia collection, which, if memory serves me, I only have one video of Stamperia. It's really nice paper. Comes from Italy. And we carry it in the shop. And I think I've only got one mini album out. Stamperia, I think it's called Ceremony. And I really like the paper. So I've got most of it designed and ready to go, and my goal is to get that out before Christmas. And then the next collection, as far as graphic goes, I think it's going to be The Gentleman, because that is what they just released. Then after that, in January, exciting, be going to what's called Creativation, and that is where I'm just trying to, I need to get, here, let's see, I need to get some contrast paper under here. That is where Graphic will be showcasing, is this going here? Or yeah, showcasing their next collections. And I'm excited to see what they've got coming out. So mid-January, I'll be running off to Arizona to do that with my partner, Julie, and I'm really looking forward to it. One, getting away from home, but also really getting a chance to see the new collection that went down crooked, so I'm going to lift it. Wow. The glitter glue is still, hopefully, wet, and it was. Good. That just didn't go as expected. You know what? I'm not happy with that. I think I've cut the paper. It's just too tight. So I'm going to take a sliver off of this and then lay it down. Not thrilled with my margin. Now let's see. Oh yeah, I like that better. Oh, when I get done laying this down, I want to show you this new trimmer. I have, that margin is a little bigger than I like, but I'm going to live with it. I've done better, but overshot my glue a little there too. Okay, so that's in. Pardon me. Here's what I want to show you, and I think I showed it to you in my last video. This is a new trimmer from, and we don't even sell it, but I just want to promote it because I'm very fussy about my trimmers and about getting good, solid right angles. And I don't know why that is so hard for the industry to accomplish. It's just a complete mystery to me why that's so challenging. This is the best portable trimmer I have used in probably 10 years. It's Martha Stewart. Now, it's my understanding that she had something very similar to this. This is the latest released. You can pick it up at, I think I got mine at Michael's. Yeah, Michael's, but I think Joann's carries it too. $19.99 retail. And then, of course, you can apply a coupon. I got mine 40% off with an additional 20% off, so I paid $7 for this. I wouldn't sell it for $40. It does perfect right angles. And the replacement blades, you get 3 for $6. That is very reasonable. So as far as a portable trimmer, I can't say enough good things about it. I was a big fan of. Hey, sorry about that. I got cut off because I got a phone call. My husband called me. But I was blabbing on about this trimmer, and what I just can't say enough good things. Like I said, it's Martha Stewart. I think it is. She had something similar about 5 years ago that people had talked about issues of this the trimmer or the blade piece not holding firm. I haven't had that issue at all, so maybe she's done some redesign to improve that. The reason I bought it originally is so that I could do stop-start cut lines. And it's got this little magnifier in here, which is significant for me because I can't see worth a darn. But it's turning out to be my go-to portable trimmer for anything because it makes right angles. Who knew that would be so challenging? What I started to say before was I used to be a huge fan of Fisker when they had that old large rotary trimmer that had the gray base, and that worked for me for years and I never had any issues with it. And then they changed something in the way they produce the cut mat, that little sliver that fits inside the board. And ever since they did that, I haven't been able to get a straight cut out of any Fiskars. My old one, any of the new ones, I keep trying and I've just had terrible luck with it. So I finally, at least on the rotary ones, given up. And then I had tried one of the straight blades, also same thing, couldn't get a nice right edge. And frankly, what I think it is they put this piece right here where your paper stops. For some reason, they rounded that. And I think that's what's causing it to not create a right angle. Because your paper can sort of slide up the side of that. I'm not positive, but at any rate, it doesn't cut straight, so I get frustrated. This has wound up being a godsend. So I can't recommend it enough. And they did not pay me to say that. And like I said, I would gladly pay $20 for that. I've got trimmers that I've paid $60 for that don't cut near as straight as this. So, and it's also very light. All right, enough about that. But when I do come across tools that I'm really happy with or pleased with, I will certainly pass that on to you guys. Because that's one of the reasons I like to watch videos and go to scrapping events. And like I said, I'm getting ready to go to Creativation, which is a conference for crafters. And it covers more than just paper, but paper is a big part of it. And I always find new tools there. And if we come across something that is noteworthy, we will certainly share it on this channel. Okay, so here is an example of where I really wanted to use this yellow and I was running short of it. And as you can see, the margins are too great. So this is where my piecing comes in. I cut a thin strip off of the stripe pattern page. And I'm either going to adhere this to the top or bottom, and I haven't decided yet, to stretch this designer piece, right? So that's a little cheat, and that's the way we do it. I think I'm going to put it on top since I've already got a decorative strip down here. So I'm going to get this in, and then I'll come back and add that thin strip. And I mentioned it, pretty sure I mentioned it. This album, I started with a complete collection. That's a 12 by 12 collection, the 8 by 8 pad, and the patterns and solids. the ephemera pack, tags, pockets, and chipboard. And I'm very likely going to need some more 12 by 12 sheets. So if you follow my design, you are going to either find yourself short designer paper for the cover and the inside covers, or you're going to need to buy some additional 12 by 12. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some, we also sell 8 single sheets, so one each of each design. And I'm probably going to go ahead and invest in that 8 sheet pack to finish this project. Now, part of the reason is, like I said, I designed it before I had the paper. So I'm actually running tight on a couple of the patterns. And the other reason is I'm having to redesign my cover because Christine and I think a lot alike. And actually, I want to do these 3 sides since I know it's going to have a large margin on top. And my cover wound up looking so much like hers. Once she released her video, I decided I didn't want to do that, and I wanted to have some variation for you guys. So that kind of killed 2 sheets for me, which, you know, it's a considerable amount of paper. It would have covered the front. I still think I'm going to be shy because of my inserts and the insides of the album itself. So just FYI, if you're constructing this, you're probably going to need the bundle plus one more packet of the 8 sheet selection. And of course, the other way to get around that is to use some coordinating cardstock. And if I were going to do that, I would, and try to follow the video, I would do all my exposed pieces in the closed position with the designer papers first, get all that laid out, and then come back and see how much paper you've got left, and then decide where you want to put coordinating cardstock versus pattern paper. You'll still have a lot of pattern paper, but not enough to do every inside piece. So then you can kind of strategically plan, well, what's going to get cardstock and what's going to get designer paper. But like I said, I would come and, for example, do this layout, get this page, even though it's not on top, it's exposed, this piece in, these pieces in. And then come back and decide, well, do I want to use designer paper here or coordinating cardstock? If you want to try to make the bundle stretch. And then the other thing is you can do these 2 flaps, designer, and then do core cardstock here instead of these 2 pieces. And that might help you stretch. So just some ways to plan. But if you get started and want to do it exactly like I'm doing, I am going to recommend that you get that pack, the additional 8 pack, to cover all your pages. So I tried to dry fit everything at least once, and when you have these flaps like this, it's important because you don't want to get so close to the score line that it doesn't want to close freely. Okay, so I know this is my top, this is my back, and then here, you know, it doesn't look bad if you just use some coordinating cream cardstock. You could do that for a photo mat instead of this. Now, if I had my choice, I'm going to do this every time. So while I was going on about that trimmer, I think I told you, but I'll say it again. I got interrupted because a phone call came in, so I may have repeated myself. I didn't go back and watch the video to see exactly where it cut me off. So we've got these 2 inside or B-side flaps to finish, and I think then we are finished with page 2. It is a fun page. There's a lot going on, and you can see where all the paper goes. I mean, for every flap, you know, you've got double, whatever you use for cardstock, you double for designer paper. All the mechanisms make it interesting, but it does take up a lot of paper. Oops. And then also on that page, as I noted, there is a pocket on the bottom, so we'll want to fill that pocket with something too. So I'm going to show you what I have preliminary planned. Once I get this down, these two pieces down, and I'll walk through the finished design real quick and then show you what I was planning to put in the pocket. It's not finished right now, and that'll happen in the next video. I'll complete that in the next video. Okay, this is directional, so I want to make sure I'm going the right direction. Okay, I want to get a good look at my 3 edges. Okay, we are in burnish. Okay. So that's coming along. Lovely, lovely. This is the last piece. Removing my stickies. Drying quickly. Progress. I might get interrupted here in a few minutes. Expecting my son home from school pretty quick. But I really want to try to get page 2 finished. And that's kind of a good, possibly a good stopping point today. Although I'm going to go as long as I can because it's very rare that I'm home and it's quiet. I've got my husband or my son or somebody making noise, so this is kind of a treat. So I'm going to go as long as I can today, as long as light permits. Okay, I'm going to turn it sideways as usual. I am going to confirm that this is the top, so I want to make sure my print is going the right direction, and I did. That off, get my contrast underneath. Okay, I'm looking for clean margins on three of these 4 sides. Lovely. Every page should go down that easy. They don't, but they should. Okay, now that is the end. Let me verify. Of page 2. Okay. So what I have planned for this pocket right here is, it's a little hard to get to because this is kind of bulky now that all the paper's in. Hopefully I can get to it. And if I can't, originally I planned this to go like this. Yeah, like this. And I want this to slip this way because this piece is what's going to hold the top flap in place. So without it, the top flap will move because there's no magnet holding it in place. The left and right flap are being held closed by magnets. Oh, they don't feel very strong. It's funny. Today they just don't seem to be gripping. And then this bottom pocket will hold this flap in place. And I'm just being careful because this is not glued down yet. So that's kind of the plan for this, and that'll be the end of page 2. So again, we've got a right flap, a left flap, base, a nice pocket, Then this whole mechanism lifts up to reveal 2 large photo mat spaces. And again, if you're following my tutorial and using the same prints where I do, be sure to pay attention to the top flap. If you have your book upside down, it's very easy to put that in upside down. And then this is the flap to the left, and this is the base mat, and that is the end of page 2. So I'm going to set this insert, and we'll come to that in the 3rd video aside. And I am pulling out my page 3 stash. And then I'm going to walk you through the mechanisms that we're going to be covering. So this is page 1 of my Christmas album. So I have a flap, and then it opens again. And this was exactly like I did in my Christmas Magic. So it should feel similar. So this is what I'm calling an extended flap. This is the top flap. And the reason I like this design is otherwise when you flap it open, you've got this really large flap hanging off the top. And that's kind of what's happening here. And that's about as big as you want it to go. But that would be a very large flap if you're holding it in your lap. So I like the way that it folds in half and then again. Excuse me. And this is a pocket. Okay, so this should go pretty quickly. Again, some creative piecing because paper was very tight. And most of this, the interior pockets and the designs that I'm going over right now, were all done prior to me reaching for that 3rd pack of, this is going to go on here. I really just like the way that looks. That 3rd pack of paper. So I did some piecing that if I had already opened that 3rd packet of 8 single sheets, I might not have done. I still like the look, but it is very time consuming. I need a little sip of coffee to keep me going there. Page 3, top flap. Inside, I'm going to get all my, this is the extended flap. Inside, those are inside pieces, so outside. Okay, so this is going to go here. And this goes here. And that is what the cover will wind up looking like. Is that right? Yeah. And so I try to coordinate, you know, and carry patterns across the 2. So you see this, and these 2 are the same, right? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this piece. Get some tape on it and get it laid down. And this is what I am calling, let's set these aside, the extended flap. Extended top flap. And I can tell by the pattern, this is from, you can see the size of the dots. This is from the 8x8. So I definitely did use the 8x8. And I have a few sheets left. And like I said, before I cut into the 8x8s, that 2nd packet, I'm going to try to make all this go as far as I can to cover the cover, the inside, and the inserts before I break out that single sheet pack and let you know if it's possible to actually get the album done with just a bundle. But I'm doubting it very seriously. All right, what did I do with my pick tool? There it is. Right here where I left it. I should have dry fit this before I took the tape back off. One of these flaps and extended flaps, I had a little trouble with the paper torquing, and rather than taking the flap apart, what I was planning on doing is adjusting the trim on the mat if required. So I flipped it over so I could dry fit it real quick and see if this is the one where I had trouble with it. And what I mean is, because this is cut at a precise right angle, no, it looks straight. If this was off and not a right angle, then I might slightly change my cut line to make it match this. But it looks straight. It looks clean. So it might be, remember I use each one of the page designs twice. It might be on the second version of this. That's the thing about score lines and folding. It's really quite a challenge to get a perfect right angle once you do a score line. Just getting my contrast pieces. I chose this pattern for these 2 pages out of the 8x8 collection because of scale. The other one, the scale was off to the extent that I felt like I was cutting the bodies in half. So the 8x8 scale of this pattern worked better for this size mat. If I was doing a whole page, probably would have used the larger. Okay, so this goes here. And I want my contrast page up there. Okay. But for the moment, I'm just going to add some tape. Oops, not glue, tape. Good grief. Keep forgetting to put the cap on my glue, and it's definitely drying out. So if you don't know, here's just a shout out reminder. We do carry the art glitter glue in our shop. And I know I've mentioned that before, and we carry it in the 4 and the 8 ounce bottle. I'm sorry, the 2 and the 4 ounce bottle. I said that wrong. But we are running, or we're going to run low on this. And for those of you that don't know that use the art glitter glue, there is a couple times, or several months out of the year, where they won't ship it because of temperature. And it does something to change the structure of the glue. I don't think it's a pressure problem. I think it's a temperature problem. At any rate, it won't be long before they're not shipping again. So now's a good time to stock up on your art glitter glue so you don't run low during the off months. And honestly, I know that because Julie told me, but I don't really have the technical understanding of what's going on there. Maybe while I'm at Creativation this year, I get a chance to talk to them and ask them what is the story on why they don't ship. I think it's 4 months out of the year, which is a good long time if you're in need of glue. Okay, so that is in. So I am referring to this as the top flap, the extended flap. So those are in. I'm going to go ahead and deploy them. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the pocket piece down real quick. And I'm going to reposition my contrast paper here. Put the cap on my glue. And then it goes down this way. Just use that to burnish because it was handy. This strip up. I'm actually wind up using 2 contrast pieces. So, hey, I just realized I'm talking very quiet, and I'm sorry about that. This cold nonsense has got my ears all messed up, so I can't really hear myself. Or actually, I can hear myself very loudly, but I just realized I was kind of mumbling, so hopefully I didn't do that for too long, or you guys didn't miss anything important. Okay, that's in. And again, lots of piecing going on in this album for 2 reasons. One, just the large format. I think if you have just big, long stretches of the designer paper, well, you might as well just keep it in the pad. And the other is to do little things like this. Like I didn't have quite enough to cover this pocket, and since I pre-designed the album and constructed the album before I decided how to apply the designer paper, it makes it hard to go back and just trim this pocket down to size. That's one of the pitfalls of designing the album without the paper. But the way to get around that is to do these little decorative strips. And they can be a little bit of a challenge, but I think they're pretty. And I think, like I said, when you have these really large formats, breaking it up keeps it interesting. And 8.5 by 10.5 is a pretty large format. You know, you're starting to get to that 12 by 12 design space where you really have to think about breaking up even your flaps. So okay, so that is in, and that margin is not ideal, but it's going to be covered, so I'm really not going to fuss with it much more. But if I had it to do over again, that would probably be a little bit wider. But it's going to be closed for the most part, and then ultimately there will be some sort of an insert here. And then I've designed this little, Live the Life You Imagined is going to go here. And it'll be covered when it's closed, but we'll add that in the embellishment phase. Okay, the next piece is going to be insides of these flaps. Okay, so here is what I have planned. Page 3, top extended flap. So this goes here. This is going to go down here. And then this is going to go like this. Just like that. So here's the whole layout. So you've got the hearts. Then we've got this piece kind of split apart just to keep it interesting. The hearts and then the polka dots. Okay, so I am going to set the flaps aside and get this base in. And then come back and do those 2 pieces, and that is the end of page 3. Is that right? Page 3, yeah. And of course, this is the flip side. You could do that if you wanted, but it's pretty busy. So I chose the hearts, which will provide a more neutral base so that whatever I put in the pocket will pop out against it. And or if I put photos on it, it's more neutral. Stick. That didn't work. Doesn't happen very often, but once in a while, inside the run of the score tape, there'll be a break that happened during the manufacturing process. Not very often. With score tape, I seem to run into that a little bit more with the less expensive brands, which I don't use anymore. If you want your project to last, it's really best not to skimp on adhesives, be it wet or dry adhesives. I mean, it's so critical. The whole thing it's holding the whole thing together. Kind of like picking your cardstock for the cover, your base cardstock for the cover of the album. It's best to, you know, spend some money on and test out cardstocks that score nicely, because if it's a mechanism that moves like the cover of the album, you know, you don't want that to wear out. The internal pieces sometimes don't move as much, not as critical. If it has a score line in it, it means it's going to move. So I'm trying to get decent paper. And I didn't start the video this way, but I use Astro Bright's 65 pound. You can find it at Walmart in the office section, or over by where they have invitation and envelopes. And I've just had great luck with it. It scores nicely, it holds up, and it's not very expensive at all. I've tried going to heavier cardstock, but if you put a score line in it, it just seems like it wants to crack. Okay, seriously getting in my own light, so I'm gonna have to flip this over. That's the challenge with these big formats too, just trying to rotate it around. Trying to keep all my tools in reach. But then if I want to rotate the book, it seems to knock everything over. Okay, I need a contrast sheet. There we go. All right, this needs to slip inside the pocket. So I'm going to focus on getting a straight line at the top, leaving it loose in the middle, and then tucking it behind the pocket, tucking it into the pocket. Easier said than done, I'm sure. There we go. Okay. Yes, it's in. It's in. Okay, I'm gonna pick it up and turn it all right back, right side again. Varnish everything. Pretty happy with that. Okay, now I'm gonna put this piece in. So I'm gonna double check. Turn it this way again. I'm gonna double check my dry fit. And it looks beautiful. Add tape and glue and get it down. And I like the way that looks, even though you only see it temporarily that way, but to have that design pattern continue, it's kind of nice. Not really a burnishing tool, but it's handy. And I'm really trying to crank up my speed because I'm losing light. Okay, I want to make sure that, I know it's directional, I want to make sure I've got my patterns going the right way. And I do. Or I will. This can be a little challenging, or the pages that have magnets can be a little bit of a challenge because it's just thick enough to create kind of a bubble there and may cause your margins to be off slightly. Okay, that is in. So now you can see how I have this bare strip, and that's where I attach the flap, and I've got a strip, a contrast strip that I'm going to lay down right there, and here it is. Turn everything right side up. Get rid of my sticky notes. This is going to go right here. And I believe that'll be the conclusion of page 3. That was too much glue. These little strips are kind of hard because they're so narrow. It's really easy to overdo it on the glue. Ooh, and I also see I have bare white edge, but only on one. Okay, fixed. Can't have that. Can't have any white showing. Have one more, or 2 more pieces that go down these 2. Okay. I am going to get some tape on these, and I'm going to go ahead, in preparation for laying those down, turn my book over and then just set it aside. Get my tape down. This way, so I'm checking my orientation, and then of course the gold, it doesn't matter. this down. Now I flip this, and the tape is not exposed, and the reason I'm doing this is the challenge with getting even margins when you cut things in half, right? So looks like that's right. Okay. So I was just trying to get a visual on how much space I should have here. And that's pretty tight. That's pretty good, yeah. Because I didn't want to get this down and then find out, oh, I don't have enough of a gap between the two, or I don't have enough of a margin over here. So just doing that visually. And like I said, I really like piecing. I think that it's very visually interesting, but it is a little more time consuming. And, you know, I'd have to say it could be frustrating if you're a beginner because you have more margins to deal with than if you just had a single piece here. So it's like I'm dealing with two margins on one flap instead of just a single. But I think it makes it very interesting. Another way around that is to not plan, just do a single page, and then you avoid it altogether. But the other way is to not plan a black seam in between and have them butted up against each other. And that looks nice too, but I like the, I really think the black mat around each piece really makes it pop. So I'm a big fan of that. And in my book, it's worth the investment, but not for everybody. So that is the end of page 3, and we're gonna walk through it again real quick. So there's a few things going on page 3. This is one large flap. That is what I call the top flap. This is what I call the extended flap. And that opens up. Got a little trim piece here, opens again. We've got these two pieces, this nice big photo mat space, and then down here, I've got another location for a very large photo mat or tag, which we will do in the next video. So there's a pocket on this side too, and one on this side. Okay, that's the end of page 3. What you see sticking out here is the insert, which, like I said, I don't know what I'm doing with that yet. Okay, now we are at the center of the book, and this is without a doubt my favorite layout. And it's going to take some time, so I'm going to pause here, and because I'm losing some light, I'm going to do a couple of things in advance and see if I can't get these 2 pages done for you today. But I'm going to take some of my activities offline, like the taping, to speed things up. So I'm not shifting the book around every few seconds. So with that, I'm going to pause for now, and I'll be back soon.